here.
People come to Florida for the warmth, the ocean, the escape. But beneath that perfect paradise lies another world, one of tragedy, whispers, and souls that refuse to fade. From haunted lighthouses to cursed dolls. Tonight we're unlocking the 15 most haunted places in Florida. If you dare to keep watching, was St. Augustine Lighthouse. St. Augustine. They say the St. Augustine Lighthouse isn't just a beacon for sailors, it's a beacon for the dead. Locals whisper that when the fog rolls in thick and heavy, you can still hear laughter, children's laughter echoing up the spiral staircase. Long after the museum closes and the tourists are gone. At first, you might think it's the wind, until you hear the giggle turn into a scream. Years ago, the lighthouse was home to a tragic accident. The keeper's 2 daughters were playing near the construction site when their cart slipped into the water. By the time rescuers arrived, it was too late. Since then, strange things have never stopped happening here. Visitors report the faint smell of burning oil, cold spots on the stairs, and the sound of small feet running up behind them, only to find no one there. Even the staff avoids staying too late. One guard claimed he saw a shadowy figure standing at the top of the tower, small, feminine, her dress swaying as if caught in a breeze that wasn't there. When he blinked, she vanished. Another worker swore he heard the old keeper's boots pacing the tower room, as if still on duty, guarding something or someone. Skeptics say it's just old wood settling, tricks of light, or the overactive imagination of ghost hunters. But those who've been there after dark, those who felt the chill run down their spine when the lantern flickers for no reason, they'll tell you otherwise. So here's a dare if you ever find yourself in St. Augustine. Climb those 219 steps after sunset. Stand at the top, listen closely, because if you hear that faint giggle echoing through the fog, it's already too late to run. Tutu, the Don Caesar Hotel, St. Pete Beach. They call it the Pink Palace, a place of luxury, laughter, and lingering spirits. The Don Caesar Hotel stands like a dream on St. Pete Beach, rosy walls glowing in the sunset, ocean waves whispering secrets below. But behind its beauty lies a love story so tragic, it refuses to die. In the 1920s, a young man named Thomas Rowe built this grand hotel for the woman he adored, a Spanish opera singer named Lucinda. They met in London, fell hopelessly in love, and promised to be together forever. But her family forbade the romance. Heartbroken, Rowe returned to America and poured his soul into creating the Don Caesar, a pink castle by the sea, inspired by the place they once met. Every detail, every arch was built for her. And when the hotel opened, he left a single message carved into the stone. Forever, I love you. But love can bind souls tighter than death. After Rowe died in 1940, guests began seeing a man in a white linen suit wandering the hallways, sometimes standing by the fountain where he used to wait for Lucinda. Staff say he appears near sunset, looking out over the ocean, his gaze fixed on the horizon as if waiting for her ship to return. Some guests have even seen a woman in a flowing dress standing beside him, their hands almost touching before both fade into thin air. Skeptics dismiss it as old hotel tales, but those who've stayed in the original suites swear the air grows heavy at dusk. The lights flicker softly, and faint music like an old Spanish melody echoes through empty corridors. So the next time you pass the Don Caesar, look up at its glowing pink walls and listen closely. You might just hear the whisper of a promise made a century ago. Forever, I love you. For the Biltmore Hotel, Coral Gables. The Biltmore Hotel in Coral Gables rises like a grand relic of another era, elegant, timeless, and utterly haunted. Beneath its golden lights and marble halls, whispers of tragedy and betrayal echo through the years, because behind those luxurious doors, something sinister once unfolded, and some say it never truly ended. During the roaring 1920s, the Biltmore was a playground for the rich and ruthless. One night, in the height of Prohibition, a gangster named Thomas Fatty Walsh was gunned down in Suite 1206 during a heated argument over money and loyalty. His blood soaked into the carpet, and with it, his rage. Ever since that night, guests have claimed that Fatty never checked out. Bellhops refuse to ride the elevator alone after midnight because it stops on the 12th floor by itself. Phones ring from empty rooms. Lights flicker even when the power's steady. One maid once swore she saw a man in a pinstripe suit standing by the mirror, smiling, but his reflection never smiled back. During World War II, the hotel became a military hospital, and the cries of the wounded mixed with the echoes of the past. Nurses reported footsteps in deserted corridors, doors slamming without wind, and cold spots that lingered long after the war ended. When the Biltmore reopened as a hotel, it seemed the ghosts returned too drawn to the place where glamour met grief. Skeptics call it superstition, but those who've spent a night there tell a different story, that the air grows heavy near room 1206, that sometimes a whisper calls your name from nowhere, and that if you listen closely enough, you can still hear the faint sound of jazz music and a gunshot that never stops echoing. So, if you ever stay at the Biltmore and your elevator stops on the 12th floor for no reason, maybe, just maybe, Fatty wants to see who dares disturb his eternal party. Four, Casadaga Spiritualist Camp, Casadaga. Casadaga looks peaceful at first glance. A quiet little town tucked away in Florida's heart. Sunlight pouring through moss-draped oaks. The air thick with stillness. But this isn't just another sleepy southern village. Casadaga is known as the psychic capital of the world. A place where the veil between the living and the dead is said to be dangerously thin. It began in 1894 when a man named George Colby, a spirit medium from New York, claimed he was guided by a Native American spirit to this very land. He founded the Casadaga Spiritualist Camp, where believers gathered to communicate with those who had crossed over. They built cottages, seance rooms, and healing centers, and from that day on, the dead were never far away. Visitors come seeking comfort, but many leave shaken. Some report feeling watched as they walk down the narrow dirt roads, their skin prickling though the air is warm. Others say they hear whispers in the wind, voices calling their names, faint and urgent. The Hotel Casadaga, the camp's most infamous spot, is said to be a hotspot of paranormal activity. Guests wake to find handprints on their mirrors, chairs moved across the room, or radios turning on to static, always static. Psychics who live there claim the spirits are simply restless, drawn to the energy of those who seek the truth. But skeptics who visit for fun often leave, pale and silent, refusing to talk about what they've seen. A few even claim they felt something follow them home, something that didn't want to let go. Casadaga isn't about cheap thrills or ghost stories. It's a living portal, a place where the dead still walk beside the living, and sometimes they reach out to remind you they're still here. So if you ever visit Casadaga, don't laugh, don't challenge, and whatever you do, don't ask the spirits to prove they exist. Because in Casadaga, they always answer. Where's the Cuban Club El Círculo Cubano, Tampa? In the heart of Tampa's Ybor City stands a grand yellow brick building, the Cuban Club, or El Círculo Cubano. By day, it looks like a proud monument to culture and community. But by night, when the lights dim and the music fades, the air turns heavy with something colder, older. Because the Cuban Club isn't just a relic of history, it's a house full of ghosts. Built in 1917, the club was once the beating heart of Tampa's Cuban immigrant community, a place for dancing, theater, and joy. But its beauty hides a dark past. Stories tell of a young actor who, after being booed off stage during a performance, took his own life in the theater's dressing room. Others speak of a board member who was shot dead in the middle of a heated meeting, his blood soaking into the polished tile floor. From that moment on, tragedy seemed to cling to the building like smoke. Today, the Cuban Club's theater sits mostly silent but not empty. Visitors report hearing phantom piano music drifting from the stage and the sound of applause echoing through the empty hall. Stage lights flicker without power, and a shadowy figure is often seen watching from the balcony, always in the same seat. Some even claim to have captured the image of a small boy in old-fashioned clothes playing near the staircase. Though no child has lived there in decades, paranormal investigators call it one of the most haunted buildings in Florida. They've recorded cold spots, unexplained voices in Spanish, and sudden drops in temperature when no air conditioning was on. But the eeriest part, the feeling that someone or something is always behind you, just out of sight. So if you ever find yourself walking past the Cuban Club at night, pause for a moment. Look up at the balcony. If you see someone sitting there watching, don't wave. Because in Ybor City, some audiences never go home. Old Jail, St. Augustine. In the oldest city in America stands a building that time itself seems to fear, the old jail of St. Augustine. Its gray stone walls still loom over San Marco Avenue, a reminder of the cruelty and despair that once echoed through its narrow halls. But if you walk close enough, you might feel it too, the weight of the past pressing against your skin, the faint smell of iron and fear in the air. Built in 1891, the old jail wasn't just a place to hold criminals, it was a place to break them. Sheriff Joe Perry ran it with an iron fist, and the stories say he enjoyed it far too much. Prisoners were packed into sweltering cells, chained to the walls, and often heard crying out in pain through the night. Executions were carried out in the courtyard, swift, merciless, and secret. Some say that's why the place still hums with restless energy, as if the condemned never truly left. Tour guides will tell you it's all part of history. But when the sun sets and the tourists are gone, that's when the jail truly wakes. Doors slam on their own. Footsteps echo on the upper floors, heavy, deliberate, as if someone is still patrolling the cells. Cold drafts brush against your neck where there should be no wind. And sometimes, the faint clink of chains can be heard in the dark. Visitors swear they've seen shadowy figures in striped uniforms, or the shape of a man standing near the gallows, staring silently before disappearing into the walls. Some say it's the spirits of the inmates. Others claim it's Sheriff Perry himself, still guarding his prisoners from beyond the grave. So here's your challenge if you think you're brave. Take the night tour. Stand in cell 2, lights off, and listen. If you hear breathing that isn't yours, don't turn around. In the old jail, the dead are still doing time. Seven, Riddle House, West Palm Beach. In the bright, palm-lined streets of West Palm Beach stands a house that doesn't belong in the sunlight, the Riddle House. Its white wood and gabled roof look harmless, even charming. But step inside, and the warmth of Florida vanishes. The air grows heavy, cold, like the house itself is holding its breath. Because this place has seen death and it remembers. The Riddle House was built in the early 1900s as a funeral parlor, where the dead made their final stop before burial. Later, it became a private residence owned by Carl Riddle, the city's first superintendent. But soon after he moved in, strange things began to happen. Tools went missing. Furniture shifted in the night. Workers refused to stay after dark. They claimed they saw figures in the upstairs windows long before anyone lived there. Then came the story of Joseph, one of Riddle's employees, facing financial ruin. Joseph took his own life by hanging himself in the attic. Ever since, the attic has been a place no one dares to enter alone. Visitors report hearing the rope creak, the floorboards groan, and a man's voice whisper, "Get out." Even when the house was moved to Yesteryear Village for preservation, its darkness followed. Construction workers were scratched, shoved, even locked inside rooms with no keys. Paranormal investigators have captured whispers, footsteps, and sudden cold surges that defy explanation. Some believe Joseph's spirit is angry, trapped, and violent, lashing out at anyone who dares disturb his rest. Locals say the Riddle House feeds on fear that it listens. The more you acknowledge it, the stronger it becomes. So if you ever visit Yesteryear Village and see a quaint white house sitting quietly at the edge of the path, don't be fooled. That's the Riddle House. And if you hear footsteps overhead when you're alone, don't look up. You might not like who's waiting in the attic. Eight, Maystringer House, Brooksville. On a quiet hill in Brooksville, Florida, stands the Maystringer House, a beautiful Victorian mansion draped in history, heartbreak, and something far darker than time. Locals call it one of the most haunted places in the entire state. And once you step through its creaking doors, it's easy to understand why. The air feels colder, heavier, as if the walls themselves are holding their breath, waiting for you to listen. Built in the 1850s, the May Stringer house began as a family home, but tragedy came quickly. John May, the original owner, died suddenly of tuberculosis. His young wife, Marina, was left alone to raise their daughter Jessie. But soon after, Jessie too died just 3 years old. Heartbroken, Marina was said to have spent her last days wandering the halls, calling her daughter's name. When she died, the house fell silent. But not for long. Today, the May Stringer house is a museum by day and a nightmare by night. Visitors report hearing a child's giggle echo through empty rooms. Toys move on their own. A cold breeze slips through locked doors. Many claim to have seen the ghost of little Jessie Blonde Curls, blue dress standing at the top of the staircase, watching quietly. Others say Marina still roams the halls, searching for the child she can never hold again. Paranormal investigators have recorded whispers, shadow figures, and glowing orbs drifting through the rooms. One of the most active areas is Jessie's old bedroom, where guests have felt invisible hands tugging their clothes or touching their hair. Even seasoned ghost hunters admit that the energy there is different. Sad, heavy, alive. Skeptics can argue all they want, but those who've spent the night tell the same story. The May Stringer house is more than haunted, it's grieving. So if you ever find yourself in Brooksville, standing before that grand old house, take a deep breath before you knock, because inside a mother and child are still waiting, and they've been waiting for a very long time. 9. The Vinoy Renaissance Hotel, St. Petersburg, gleaming pink against the blue Florida sky. The Vinoy Renaissance Hotel looks like pure luxury grand chandeliers, marble floors, and the soft hum of elegance. But when the sun goes down and the guests retreat to their rooms, the laughter fades, replaced by something colder, something watching. Because beneath its glamour, the Vinoy hides a haunting that refuses to check out. Built in 1925, the hotel quickly became a retreat for Hollywood stars and famous athletes. But its beauty conceals a darker reputation, one whispered about by night staff and terrified guests alike. Strange shadows drift along the walls of the 5th floor. Doors slam on their own. Lights flicker even when no storm is near. And sometimes, in the dead of night, guests awake to the sound of footsteps pacing inside their room. Though the floorboards are empty, one of the hotel's most chilling tales comes from a professional baseball player who stayed there in the 1990s. He claimed that every time he tried to sleep, the door handle rattled violently, and an icy presence hovered near the bed. When he turned on the light, nothing. But when he turned it off again, the bed dipped, as if someone invisible had sat down beside him. Staff have long whispered about a man in a long cloak and top hat, seen wandering the hallways or appearing in mirrors. No one knows who he is. Some believe he's the ghost of a wealthy guest from the 1920s who died in his suite and never left. Others say he's something older, darker, feeding on the hotel's restless energy. Even paranormal investigators have been rattled by the Vinoy's strange occurrences, voices caught on recorders, cold spots that move like they're alive, and a feeling of being followed that refuses to fade even after leaving the property. So next time you stay at the Vinoy and admire its timeless charm, remember this beauty doesn't always mean safety. And if you wake at 3 to the sound of soft footsteps by your bed, don't open your eyes. Whoever it is has been waiting a long time to be noticed. Stetson Mansion, DeLand. In the charming town of DeLand, Florida, stands a house so elegant it seems carved from a fairy tale, the Stetson Mansion. Built in 1886 by hat tycoon John B. Stetson. It was once the grandest home in the state, a masterpiece of stained glass, carved wood, and timeless grace. But behind the beauty of its walls, there lingers a strange heaviness, as though something unseen walks the halls, keeping watch over a past that refuses to rest. The mansion was more than a home. It was a symbol of wealth and innovation. Presidents visited, orchestras played, and the laughter of high society filled every room. Yet, when the parties ended and the lights dimmed, servants whispered about whispers, disembodied voices calling from upstairs, cold drafts in locked rooms, and the faint sound of footsteps pacing endlessly through the grand hallway. Over the years, strange occurrences became impossible to ignore. Visitors reported doors opening and closing on their own, music boxes playing softly in empty rooms, and mirrors that seemed to breathe a fog, forming briefly, as though someone unseen had exhaled nearby. In the nursery, toys would shift positions overnight, and one caretaker swore she saw the reflection of a woman in 19th century clothing standing behind her, though she was alone. Some say it's the spirit of Mrs. Stetson, still watching over the home she adored. Others believe the mansion itself is alive, infused with the emotions of every joy, sorrow, and secret it has ever held. Paranormal teams have recorded whispers, gentle, almost pleading, and strange energy spikes near the ornate staircase, as if the past refuses to let go. Still, the mansion endures, beautiful, haunting, and deeply mysterious. Visitors leave with a strange feeling, an ache in the chest, as if they've stepped through time and brushed shoulders with history itself. So, if you ever visit the Stetson Mansion and feel a soft hand on your shoulder when no one's there, don't be afraid. Perhaps it's just the house saying, "Welcome home." (11) The Devil's Chair, Cassadaga Cemetery. Hidden deep within the eerie stillness of Cassadaga Cemetery sits an old brick and stone bench known only by one name, the Devil's Chair. To the unknowing, it looks harmless. A weathered seat between ancient tombstones, half covered in moss. But locals will tell you this is no ordinary bench. Sit here after midnight, and you're not sitting alone. The legend goes that if you take a seat on the Devil's Chair at the stroke of midnight, the devil himself will appear, or at least whisper to you. Some say he offers wisdom, others say he tempts you with promises you'll regret accepting. And if you're brave or foolish enough to leave a can of beer on the chair overnight, by morning it will be empty, even though it's never opened. Cassadaga, known as the psychic capital of the world, already hums with supernatural energy. Mediums, ghost hunters, and skeptics alike have all felt something unnatural in that cemetery. The air grows colder near the chair. The night feels heavier. Some visitors claim they've heard breathing right beside them, felt a hand brush their arm, or seen red eyes glowing faintly from the tree line. One story tells of a young man who dared his friends to sit in the chair on Halloween night. They laughed when he took the challenge, beer in hand. But when they came back to get him, he was gone. His body was found the next morning just a few feet away, eyes wide open, frozen in terror. The beer can empty. Locals say the chair was built for mourning families, a place to rest beside lost loved ones. But something else claimed it, something ancient, drawn to grief, like a moth to flame. So if you ever find yourself wandering through Casadaga Cemetery after dark, and you see that lonely stone chair calling your name, remember it's not a place to rest. It's an invitation. And once you sit down, you might not be the one who gets back up. Seattle Greenwood Cemetery, Orlando. By day, Greenwood Cemetery in Orlando is peaceful, a quiet resting place shaded by century-old oaks, their branches dripping with Spanish moss that sways in the warm Florida breeze. But when the sun dips below the horizon and darkness seeps between the headstones, that peace dissolves. The air changes, the silence hums, and those who wander too far after midnight often swear they are not alone. Founded in the 1880s, Greenwood holds over a century of the city's dead politicians, soldiers, pioneers, and children all sleeping side by side beneath the earth. But the stories say not everyone here is resting. Groundskeepers tell of lantern lights floating through the mist, of whispers weaving between the trees, and of a cold hand brushing against theirs when no one else is there. The most famous spirit is said to be a Confederate soldier who roams the southern edge of the cemetery. Dressed in tattered gray, he appears near his own grave, saluting silently before fading into the fog. Others claim to have seen a spectral woman dressed in white, kneeling near the children's section. Her sobs, so faint they sound almost like the wind until you realize the wind has stopped. Ghost tours brave Greenwood often, but even guides admit the place carries a strange energy. Cameras malfunction. Batteries drain in seconds. Some visitors have seen figures moving between the tombs, dark shapes that vanish when approached. And sometimes, the faint sound of marching boots can be heard echoing down the paved paths, even though no one is there. Still, the city keeps Greenwood's gates open for those who dare to walk its winding trails. It's said that if you enter on a moonless night and listen closely, you'll hear the cemetery breathe the rustle of leaves, the murmur of the restless dead, and perhaps a voice whispering your name. So if you visit Greenwood after dark, tread softly, show respect, and when you feel the chill crawl down your spine, don't turn around. The dead of Orlando are watching, and they don't take kindly to the living who forget where they stand. "13 Bellamy Bridge, Mariana." Deep in the swamps of Mariana, Florida, shrouded by mist and the hum of crickets, stands the rusted skeleton of Bellamy Bridge, a lonely remnant of a love story that refused to die. Locals call it one of the most haunted spots in the state, and when you hear the story behind it, you'll understand why. Because some nights, when the moonlight cuts through the fog, a figure in white appears on the bridge, and she's still waiting for her husband. The legend tells of Elizabeth Jane Bellamy, a young bride who married her beloved, Dr. Samuel Bellamy, in the 1830s. Their wedding was grand, their love genuine, but tragedy struck just weeks later. On a quiet evening, Elizabeth's dress caught fire from a nearby candle. She ran screaming into the night, her gown blazing, and collapsed by the Chipola River. She died in Samuel's arms, burned and broken, her final words said to be a promise. "I'll never leave you." Heartbroken, Dr. Bellamy buried her near the site that would later become the bridge. But he was never the same. Some say his grief drove him to madness, and that in the years that followed, travelers began to see a glowing apparition wandering the bridge, her face veiled, her gown still flickering like embers. They call her the Ghost Bride of Bellamy Bridge. To this day, hikers and ghost hunters come searching for her. They hear soft sobbing in the dark, the sound of footsteps on the old bridge planks, or a faint orange glow moving through the trees. Some even claim to have seen her reaching out, arms stretched, as if calling for her lost husband. Skeptics dismiss it as swamp gas or tricks of light, but locals know better. They say love that deep doesn't die, it lingers, it aches, it haunts. So if you find yourself near Bellamy Bridge after midnight, stand still and listen. You might hear the wind whisper her name, or see her glowing form rise through the mist. Just remember, she's not looking for you. She's still looking for him. 14. Robert the Doll, East Martello Museum, Key West. In the warm, sunlit streets of Key West, where laughter and music fill the air, there's a museum that holds something no one dares to laugh at. Inside a glass case at the East Martello Museum sits a small, worn doll stuffed with straw, dressed in a sailor's outfit, and holding a tiny toy dog. His name is Robert. And he's not just a doll, he's a curse. The story begins in the early 1900s, when young Robert Eugene Otto was given the doll by a Bahamian servant who practiced voodoo. The boy loved it so much he named it after himself, Robert. But soon, strange things began to happen. Neighbors claimed they saw the doll move from window to window when no one was home. At night, the Otto family would wake to the sound of giggling and little Jean's terrified screams. When his parents rushed in, they'd find the boy hiding under the covers, whispering. Robert did it. As Jean grew older, he kept the doll. Even after his parents died, he gave Robert his own room in the house. Visitors said they heard footsteps upstairs, or saw the doll's expression change when no one was looking. And when Jean's wife tried to move Robert to the attic, she reportedly heard footsteps following her, and the door slammed shut behind her. After Jean's death, the house was sold. The new owners claimed to hear laughter in the halls, and children walking by would cross the street rather than look at the windows. Eventually, Robert was moved to the East Martello Museum, where the strange activity only intensified. cameras malfunction, voices whisper through recordings, and guests report a suffocating feeling of dread when they stand too close. But the most chilling thing, Robert hates disrespect. Museum staff warn visitors always ask permission before taking his photo. If you don't, bad luck follows accidents, illness, heartbreak. Thousands of apology letters arrive at the museum each year, begging Robert's forgiveness. So if you ever visit Key West and find yourself face to face with a glass case and two button eyes staring back, be polite. Say hello, say goodbye, and whatever you do, don't laugh, because Robert is listening. At 15, the haunted fort, Fort Pickens, Pensacola Beach. At the edge of Pensacola Beach, where the waves crash against weathered stone and the air tastes of salt and gunpowder, stands Fort Pickens, a fortress built to protect, but doomed to remember. Its brick corridors twist like veins through the earth, dark and echoing, and when night falls, the fort breathes. The air grows still. The silence stretches thin, because here, the dead never left their posts. Built in the 1830s, Fort Pickens was meant to guard the Gulf Coast, but its history was carved in blood and tragedy. Soldiers suffered in the humid darkness, prisoners wasted away in their cells, and in 1886, the most infamous inmate of all arrived, the great Apache leader, Geronimo. Though he was treated with curiosity rather than cruelty, the sorrow of captivity hung over the fort like a storm cloud, and some say it never lifted. Today, Fort Pickens is a tourist site by day, but by night, it transforms. Shadows glide silently along the walls. Lantern lights flicker deep within tunnels long sealed. Park rangers have reported hearing boots marching in perfect rhythm. Phantom soldiers keeping guard through eternity. Some visitors have felt cold hands brush their shoulders or heard whispers echo from the empty gun chambers, always just out of reach. The most chilling stories come from Battery 234, one of the darkest corners of the fort. People describe seeing a soldier in a blue uniform staring out toward the sea, his face pale, his eyes hollow. When approached, he fades into the mist. Others claim to hear Geronimo's mournful chant, carried on the wind, a song of loss, of longing, of restless spirits that cannot go home. Skeptics say it's imagination. Locals say it's history refusing to be forgotten. So if you ever wander through Fort Pickens after sunset, bring a flashlight, but know it won't help you see what's really there. Listen to the echo of the ocean through the old stone walls. And remember, every shadow here has a story, and some of them are still waiting to finish it. And there you have it, 15 places in Florida where the sunshine ends and the shadows begin. But these are just the ones you know about. There are still towns that don't appear on any map, voices that haven't been recorded, and stories locals refuse to tell after dark. If you want to see what's lurking beyond the palm trees, hit subscribe and keep the lights off, because next time, we're going deeper into the places Florida tries to forget.